Elemental Gimmick Gear, or EGG for short, is one hell of a good time. What we got here is an action RPG with shades of Zelda and Phantasy Star, but with just as much original design and lore too. It was a hugely ambitious project that actually ended up being a fairly small game in the end. Published by Hudson Soft of Bomberman fame, the story of this game's development is almost as interesting as the game itself. We'll certainly get into it as we go because there's plenty to talk about with this one. Let's start with the story and premise. You'll already notice just from this opening that the art style is very striking. We will circle back to that in a little bit because here's our boy now, the Egg. This dude starts strong by immediately getting trapped inside a cave and stuck for years until he's discovered and rescued by a team of archaeologists. They dig the Egg out but find that the pilot is in a coma. The Egg itself is a mech, you see, this is a mech game. The pilot is then taken to a lab where he's kept alive, and then thanks to a digging mishap, some big crazy earth-shaking catastrophe happens where this ruin comes to life and starts destroying shit with its tentacles, and our pilot wakes up. His name is Leon. The scientists here are all very friendly and good-natured. They did keep you alive for a long time after all. While you're here, you can potter around the lab and learn some interesting story stuff. For instance, it was the discovery of your egg that led to some kind of global arms race where everybody started building mechs, and now every .com has its own Metal Gear. Anyway, once you're done, the science bros set you off on a quest to recover your memory because it's an RPG from the 90s and so the protagonist has amnesia. That's the setup. We're this little blue-haired dude in our green egg mech and we gotta explore the ruins of Fogner to discover what happened to us, and along the way we combat some pirates and grapple with some deep elemental evil. Before that, of course, we can chill out in the cute little town and learn some lore facts and such. So just to recap, we are a robot-themed hero who winds up in a peaceful cute town ravaged by invading pirates. He decides to become a digger and explore some ancient ruins across the island that house a destructive force that should not be awakened. But jokes aside, one big priority for Team Birthday was a focus on gameplay. They felt that RPG type games were getting too caught up in being cinematic around the late 90s, and so they wanted to strip it back and focus on a game that felt good. They chose to include some FMVs, but a lot of the story happens in-engine, and much of it is optional dialogue and notes and such. They wanted you to have fun exploring the world. And in exploring, the story would just kind of tell itself through the environment. This is a mindset that I think we see a lot more these days with smaller studios and indie devs. I'm pretty into it. So we are mainly going to be controlling our egg from this isometric perspective right here. Once again, the hand-drawn art is gorgeous and we will talk about those influences in a little bit. Whilst in the egg, you can run and punch and turn yourself into a ball to roll around at high speeds. You can also unlock power-ups as you go, like Fireball and Ice Blast and Hookshot. Because this is an action RPG and the Zelda type elements are on full display. Our man controls a little bit slippery when he's inside the mech, but somehow it isn't annoying and you get used to it pretty quickly. He can also get out on foot to explore the indoor areas and chat with the townsfolk. We're going to be doing a lot of that Zelda stuff, like I say. Think here primarily Link's Awakening or Link to the Past, and you won't be far wrong. Lots of levers, switch puzzles, mazy little temples, cool baddies. And in a completely bonkers move, they also decided to do a full 3D mode for the game too, but you only see it during boss battles. Once we switch into this mode, it all gets a little bit Power Stone with the dash in and slap in and frenetic action. It feels like a different game during these segments, but I like it a lot, and it weirdly adds some gravitas to these fights. The fact that the whole engine changes really denotes how you are now dealing with a big badass fight as opposed to just your standard grunt type enemies. But now we really do need to get into all this pretty art direction, and to start, it's worth talking about how the idea for this game came about. Thankfully, Shmupulations published this awesome interview with the Birthday team, and so we can get the scoop directly from the creators. Story goes that Hidetsugi Watanabe from Birthday was super into making models of little mechs and such. He liked to come up with his own designs, and one day he brought in a little egg-shaped mech to show his colleague, Hiroaki Hara. This mech, of course, became the protag of this game. The whole thing stemmed from that little idea, and from there Hara got to writing the scenario whilst Watanabe oversaw game design. This game was originally going to be released on the Saturn, but by the time it came to fruition in 1999, the Dreamcast was in full swing, so the team decided to take advantage of that by chucking in those 3D elements I mentioned earlier. But still the focus was on 2D, and there's a reason for that. Watanabe felt that the world would only look correct in 2D because of the animated style he was going for. Chiefly, he took a lot of inspiration from French artist Jean Giraud, better known by his pen name of Mobius. I'm going to flash up some of his art now, and I guarantee if you are a game enjoyer of a certain vintage, a lot of these designs are going to look familiar to you. For one thing, Panzer Dragoon took huge inspiration from this dude, but his work can also be seen referenced in some more modern stuff like Sable for instance. It's difficult to put into words, but essentially his art blends a lot of ancient looking otherworldly architecture with huge high-tech cyber stuff. So we have these massive stone faces carved into cliffs surrounded by cables and consoles. We have these adventurers exploring vast deserts, but then they're dressed like they came straight out of Jet Set Radio Future. There is a lot of crossover between that 80s anime and manga aesthetic that I love so much, and French art from around the same time. I'm not sure why, but it would definitely be an interesting thing to talk about sometime. But for now, we are talking about Egg. And I mentioned up top that the initial idea was really ambitious, and by that I'm referring to the fact that the game was originally meant to be 5 times as long as it is now. Hara mentioned in the interview how he initially envisioned the game as Egg Chronicles, which would have told the life story of 5 different pilots who all ended up using this egg. So like some Generations of Doom type beats right there. The world was also going to be 4 times bigger and span about 40 years in-game. I'm kinda glad that they had to cut back on that, not because I don't want to see the other stories, I'd actually love to, but just because I have a major aversion to big games. I always appreciated something I could beat in a weekend rental back in the day, and Egg is currently sitting at about the right length for that. In the year 2023, it might be hopelessly optimistic to think we would ever see Egg 2, but stranger things have certainly happened, and if it ever got kickstarted, I would back it for sure. This is a good ass game right here. Like I say, it wears its Zelda influences on its sleeve and that the towns have a little bit of that early Squaresoft type feel, but the story and aesthetic do make it feel wholly original. Even down to the map and temple designs. Blending high-tech stuff with natural structures isn't exactly a new idea, but I really haven't seen many other games approach it in exactly this way. The Mobius influence is pretty clear in the architecture. We have that reverent, almost spiritual or ritualistic feel into the sandstone structures, but then we also got all the beep boop consoles and snazzy neon cables all over the show, and the enemy design is also very unique. The animals you encounter around the world include snails, beetles, mosquitoes, koi carp, and these little leaf-hiding dudes that are maybe tanuki. But they all look super cute and goofy, and the animation is really expressive. When you get inside the temple ruins, you will meet a bunch of robots, including evil versions of the Egg robot, and those look suitably sinister, all while still maintaining a bit of that cartoonish whimsy and charm that the game has. As for progression, this one keeps things nice and simple. You generally always know where to go and how to move forward, but because you are consistently getting upgrades, it's always worth backtracking for power-ups. You can get batteries that sort of act like heart containers, but you can also get different stones that upgrade your attack, defense, movement, so on. So chances are you're going to stay on the main path, moving from ruin to ruin in the Mega Man Legends fashion, because in fact the vast majority of the subterranean stuff in this game is all one big location, Fogna, and it's all interconnected, so you will gradually find shortcuts to previous areas as you level up. Like I say, very Mega Man Legends. Outside of that, you can also find Lucky's hideout to unlock side game challenges and potter around helping citizens that find themselves in a pickle. You got this dumbass kid here who jumps into a sewer, you gotta break blocks to make a path, or this fella over here that got trapped in these vines, so you gotta burn them away, and then he invites us to the pub. Very nice. I could go on here about how sad it is that this never got a sequel, or I could compare the ambitious ideas being shrunk down to the story of Soul Reaver, because that also faced similar troubles during production. But since this channel focuses on positivity, I would rather circle back to the wholesome and optimistic nature of the team who made this game, because it seems like they really had a great time and they really lived this thing. In the words of Hara, I think some people will find it unrefined, others will think it's cute, and others might see it as cool, but I will be very happy if players sense the common reality to the character that I hoped to convey. I want players to love this character. From a single sculpture to ultimately being built up from the contributions of countless staff and eventually migrating to the Dreamcast, this egg, I feel a real attachment for him. That's why if we make a sequel, I hope we get to show him off in a big variety of new situations. And for what it's worth, I certainly love the character and the game, and I would highly recommend that you go and search this one out. As always friends, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like and sub buttons, and if you want to be super generous, you can become a patron and help me raise funds to buy more cool games to cover. Until next time folks, take it easy.